Wyoming News Now starts now.
Good morning, Wyoming. It is 6:30 a.m. It is Tuesday, November 3rd. It is Election Day here in the Cowboy State. Thanks for joining us. I'm Grace Foulk. We also have Carrie Hayden joining us live in studio later today, and meteorologist Aaron Lowry will also talk a little later about the forecast you can expect if you're heading to vote in person today. But first, last week I sat down with Secretary of State Ed Buchanan to talk a little bit about the election, and I asked him what his staff will be doing today and what he's looking forward to about this election season. Well, Carrie, it's amazing what 10 minutes can do. I'm actually going to step out of the shot right now just to give you a look behind me. I mean, you saw that line 10 minutes ago. It is not really here right now. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in just a little bit, but you can see not too many people waiting in line right now. But for those of you who maybe aren't that lucky or show up to a polling location and think, how long is it going to take for me to get through that line? Well, the Laramie County Clerk actually has an option on their website that allows you to look at wait times for all of the polling locations. He thinks that there are some reasons behind why we're seeing these fires burning so intensely. Now, he says one of those reasons is forest management practices over the years. Another thing that he says is climate change. I mean, drought conditions in Wyoming, he says, account for some of the reasons why these fires are burning intensely. He said it moves kind of like the pancake breakfast at CFD, so if you get in line, you think it's going to take forever, you'll probably get through a little bit quicker than you thought. Now, I did also have another voter come up to me earlier this morning who said he had gone through the line, went up to vote, and he said the timestamp on the voting machine was a little bit off, and so he just had some questions about that. Well, I put in a call to the Secretary of State's office, and they said with these machines, the timestamp that you see on them doesn't really matter a whole lot. The machines will be turned off at the end of the night once everybody who arrived to the polls by 7 has gotten through and voted. I'm very excited about this because we're used to Wyoming winters and having that sheet of ice on our windshields when we get out and it's snowing. Well, guess what? That's gone today. That is not here. All of this ice is melting on your windshield. We will be hearing from Secretary of State Ed Buchanan. I have a few live interviews this morning from different political parties in Laramie County. But first, what kind of weather can you expect heading into the polls? Meteorologist Aaron Lowry is joining us this morning. Aaron, I said in our 5:30 show I couldn't believe I didn't have gloves on, and now I am regretting it just a little bit. My toes, my fingers, a little cold, but still a beautiful morning in Wyoming. And something that I heard quite a bit going into the budget session back in February and March was that this is the people's house. That's something Speaker of the House Steve Harshman has said repeatedly, and that's one thing that's missing here today. The general public is not allowed in the Capitol building today for this special session. If you remember, he is the public affairs specialist for Medicine Bow National Forest. Aaron, thanks again for joining me this morning. We didn't see hardly any growth on the fire last week. We've seen containment percentages go up. So what's the latest on the Mullen fire? If you're anything like me, you spend your time walking up to a food truck window, thinking about how hungry you are and what exactly you want to eat. But for Juan and Seth, they're thinking about how they can create an experience. Imagine trying to find that missing firefighter with limited visibility, all while wearing this gear weighing anywhere from 50 to 80 pounds. After the plant is sieved, you'll end up with 2 sub-samples. So this first one has already been ground and is ready for analysis. This back one is kept just in case a farmer requests future testing. Wyomingites voted on 15 seats in the Wyoming Senate and all 60 seats in the Wyoming House of Representatives. Several races at the state level were uncontested. If you're looking for a specific race, you can find that on our website. We are going to look at some of those races right now. Statewide orders extending closures across Wyoming, hoping to reduce the spread of COVID-19.
With the COVID-19, there the big question is uncertainty, not just for the state, but for the United States and also the rest of the world. How long does this last?
Effects of the closures spreading from schools to businesses to organizations.
Yeah, so we wanted to kind of pick up where we've heard there's some slack in the community.
Another thing catching on in the community, creativity.
Our mission remains the same, right? We still are meeting human need in His name without discrimination and preaching the gospel. It just looks a little bit different, just like it does for everybody right now.
I think that we have this time, it might be good to do some introspection and to try and help out other people in the community. That's the only way we can get through this is together.
From mask-making seamstresses to the Salvation Army, people continuing finding ways to give.
We wanted to start delivering lunches. We're also doing pantry bag delivery.
What do you think about the community and being in Cheyenne during the pandemic?
This is an amazing community, and they're so supportive, at all times. But I think, especially during, really crisis time.
A community continuing to spread support in a time of uncertainty. We're continuing to follow the evolution of the hemp industry in Wyoming. This week, I had a chance to go to the lab where the Wyoming Department of Agriculture tests THC levels for the state. The Wyoming Department of Agriculture can now test for THC in hemp. It's happening at the Analytical Services Lab in Laramie. Derek Grant with the department says it was a bit of a challenge to get the program off the ground.
We had to do a lot of work on the back end to try and make sure that we were following USDA regulations and that we got delegated authority from the USDA to implement a program here in Wyoming.
Jack Troster works at the lab. He says validating the way they test can take a while.
So we had to measure or calculate like our measurement uncertainty and that type of thing. So it's a lot of replicates day after day to make sure you actually can always get an accurate and precise result.
Now, when it comes to the actual process, they dry the plant out for 24 hours. Then they take the leaves off the stem before sieving the plant.
She took out the large stems, but this will get out the smaller stems that still are above that size, as well as the seeds.
Then they grind up 1/2 of the sample. After the plant is sieved, you'll end up with 2 subsamples. So this first one has already been ground and is ready for analysis. This back one is kept just in case a farmer requests future testing. Troster says it's relatively easy to analyze THC because it's easily dissolved. They use a lab technique called chromatography to figure out the actual levels of THC in the sample of hemp they're testing.
The main thing we're excited about is it's an opportunity for another crop. The more opportunities and the more things that our producers have to grow in Wyoming, the better off.
According to information provided by the Department of Agriculture, between July 24th and September 28th, the lab had 52 submitted samples. The percent of THC in hemp needs to be less than 0.3%. When it comes to testing at the lab in Laramie, the department says 67% of the samples passed testing. And following up with a story from May of 2019, we reported on a hemp load that was seized by Highway Patrol in Uinta County last year. The Wyoming Division of Criminal Investigation said there were a couple of things that led to the load being seized. After getting back a couple of record requests, we now know that the Wyoming State Crime Lab had to pay around $30,000 to have samples of that load tested. DCI says it outsources the analysis of THC to other labs. Since hemp and marijuana look similar, the division says it needs to do this analysis to make sure they correctly identify the plant. Forrest Williams with the Wyoming DCI said frequently when new laws are implemented, there is a learning curve for law enforcement agencies, prosecutor offices, and others who work in the judicial system. This particular law has some unique challenges, primarily related to the already mentioned quantitative analysis that is required to distinguish between hemp and marijuana.